All right, so this is now called the Afterburn. This is where we go ahead and take up the comments and questions of the congregation of the body here in response to what I just taught. So if you have a comment or question, you can go ahead and raise your hand here, and Maurice will take around the mic. If you're on live stream, we've got Kirk. Oh, no, who's over there? David? Okay, Manny, you want to get over there and kind of pick up the live stream desk? All right, so who wants to start us off here locally? Raise your hand.
Okay, Rabbi, you were talking about Yeshua is the walking, talking Torah. Okay, and you're saying that we're not to defend him, but we're to defend the Torah. Where do we draw that? Are we defending, Yeshua as what we think is Yeshua, or if I'm making sense?
Okay, we don't need to defend them. We need to take a position to defend what we're doing because of them, in response to them, in our service of them, in our love of them. So that's why I say the teachings are designed so that you would understand, so you can do, so you can defend, and then so you can teach, okay? And so you are defending them when someone says, what's up with those things hanging from your clothing? And you give an answer, and you explain why you do that. That's a defense. When you take off and tell your boss, I can't work on Shabbat or a holy day, that's how you defend your relationship with them. But you don't have to defend them. Okay, you don't have to argue with the people that see, Jesus in a very different way than Yeshua, like we do. We see Yeshua very differently. Well, you don't have to sit there and argue with everybody that sees the other one. Okay, that's not required of us to do. I put a teaching out. I'm a teacher. It's out there. It's available. Some people, as a matter of fact, a lot of people I talk to, it's the first teaching they saw was the Beware False Prophets. Okay, how many of you that was your first teaching? Look, see a bunch of hands. Okay, I talked to somebody this week and they told me, oh, the first teaching I saw of yours. So, but it's the idea that we feel like, okay, so when I ask somebody, well, why do you feel like you have to correct this person or correct that person? I say, well, I feel like I have to defend Yahweh because they're wrong and they're lying and they're twisting things. But that's not our job. Okay, it's not our job. None comes unless the Father draws. It says, and we read this in the Father and the Son teaching. The Father reveals the Son to whom he wants, when he wants, how he wants, and the Son reveals the Father to whom he wants, when he wants, how he wants. We don't get in there and force the issue, okay? So no, we do not need to defend him. We defend him in our lives, though. In other words, we defend that I believe that this is pleasing in his sight, and so I'm defending my choice to be obedient to him, okay? But he doesn't need us to defend him. Yeshua is going to show up here and defend himself very nicely, okay? He's not going to need any help from us either, okay? Okay, you got to remember that you're going to have some of the things I teach, many of the things I teach, swim very strugglingly, so to speak, upstream against what you've always been taught. And you've been taught we need to go witness and save everybody, and we got to deliver and save souls and get the word out. So you have a personal responsibility to do all these things. You have one personal responsibility scripturally, for you to covenant and walk this out in fear and trembling. And then that personal responsibility can be extended if you are married to your spouse. It will extend out if you have children to your children. But it's not extended out to everybody out there. It's only extended to those intimate relationships that you have. Does that make sense? But the Christianity and the churchianity that you had kind of come out of, they really instilled that in you pretty strong. Because people are always out there going, well, do we hand out tracts? Do we do this other thing? I said, we are not out there to proselytize. Okay, the church, the Catholic Church, who started all that nonsense, the whole idea of having to proselytize, convert, and go out there and get everybody, they needed more people. They wanted power, control, and dominance. Yahweh could have everybody and anybody he wants any moment he wants it. Do we understand that? Okay? Because I'll tell you what, I had a very weird thought as a kid, and I've said this before, but I think it's interesting to say it again. I remember watching a Christian evangelist show at some point. It came up on the screen, and I really felt like the way they were yelling at people, we need to get out there, and we need to get the word out, and we need to save people's souls, because whatever. It sounded to me like the coach at halftime telling his team, we're down, by 3 touchdowns, and we need to get out there, we're losing. And I'm thinking, how could God be losing? But that's what it sounded like to me, that they may, and did you not feel that way from some of the churches you're in? That we need to get out there because we're losing. Satan's winning and we're losing. Does anybody really think that Yahweh has any issue at all beating Satan? Do you think that Yahweh actually will ever lose? Do you think that the only way he'll win is because of us? Well, he's in big trouble if that's the case. Okay? Okay, but that's what it sounded like. But yet, a lot of you were so beaten in with all that stuff that you think it, you breathe it, you don't get it. So now that you're in this, you're thinking, how do we still do that in this? Well, we don't. It's not part of this. Let that go. And so that's little pieces that are still in there. And that's what's coming up, okay? And don't feel like I'm picking on you. Everybody in this room has some of that little pieces every now and then. You got to reprogram, exactly. And we talked about that yesterday, right? The idea of reprogramming. All right? We have been so programmed and it has been so indoctrinated into us, it's really hard for us to let it go because we naturally assume that some of the mechanical things might have been wrong. Okay, Sunday, Saturday, pork and eating clean. All right, so we can make those changes, holy days. But actually, a lot of it, the mindsets, the approaches were all wrong. Okay? Which is why when you go to a congregation, you'll often get what I call either Messa-Costal, Messa-Baptist, Messa-Catholic, because it's a Messianic thing that still has all those other trappings and flavors from that other denomination. And so we have to learn to let that stuff all go. You got it ready over there back there now? Okay, go ahead.
All right, first question. I don't even know how to say this name, but it's, how do I start Torah keeping? I am currently Sabbath keeping, and I'm learning a lot from this, but I need more.
We have 1,000 videos online free. All the teachings are online free. And certainly you're welcome to partake of them as best you can and then contact us with any questions you have. I mean, the only really way to do this is to put in something new to filter out and to dilute the other stuff that was already there. So the CC101 program, which is the Covenant Community 101, has a lot of the basic and doctrinal positional things. But starting with Sabbath, we actually have a teaching on how to keep Sabbath. And then there's holy days. And then there's clean and unclean foods. And then there's understanding what salvation is all about and what grace is all about. And the nature of the Godhead and the Father and the Son teaching and those kind of things. So, but here's my encouragement. Only go at a pace that you're not going to choke on. The reason I say it that way is because some of you can do 3 teachings a day or whatever. Others of you need to listen to 1 a week or less and just keep listening to that until you figured it out, got it, and understand it. There's no rush. The idea is that Abba wants to see that we're moving forward. You don't have to be running at full speed. He doesn't want you standing still, turning left, turning right, or going backwards. So just keep moving. You may gain some momentum as you understand things better. So I recommend that you just start with the teachings, look at the titles, and let the Ruach lead you to whatever subject you need to learn about, okay, whatever that is. And then feel free to contact us with questions.
All right, Joni would like to know, what does James mean by clean in verse 3:17?
All right, so in James 3, let me get back there real quickly. All right, when he's talking about, what verse? 17. Okay, so when he's talking about the wisdom from above is first clean. Okay, so what would be the opposite of clean? Muddied, dirtied. So in other words, the wisdom from above is not filtered through and have other yuck attached to it from other places. It's just pure and clean. It's not altered, it's not bent, it's not twisted, it's not added to, it's not taken away from. It's pure and it's clean. Okay, good question. In other words, what I just said earlier about the denominational stuff. If you have an idea of understanding Sabbath, but you're filtering it through Sunday keeping. So you have mindsets from Sunday keeping that you're applying to Sabbath keeping. Or you have mindsets from, whatever denomination about what salvation is, about how grace works, whatever it is. You have to be careful to not filter in or add in what you think but allow it to be what it is. The wisdom from above is clean because it is what it is without you needing to touch it, mess with it, or taint it. Good, go ahead.
Janet Hoffman would like to know, in Proverbs 3:13 through 16, any advice to help us as parents to help our children not to harbor jealousy or selfish motives in their hearts?
Okay, so it says there, blessed is the man who's found wisdom and the man who gets understanding, for the gain from it is better than silver and increased more than fine gold, and she is precious more than rubies, etc., etc. Okay, so understand this. With your children, you are limited in what you can do. The main thing you can do is to set the example. Let them see the changes in you, the fruit in you, because some of your children will come out of the womb with a calling already. That doesn't make them better or worse than the other ones, and some of them will be waiting for that moment where Abba will open their eyes and their ears. They don't automatically have it just because yours got done. They don't have it just because they were born into you. Maybe you were married already in covenant and you have children now in covenant. That doesn't mean your children are just going to come out of the womb getting it. Everybody goes through the same process. So when you're talking about things like the jealousies and the other things, these are life experiences they're going to have to learn from so that they can do their own overcoming and they can do their own character development and growth. So my point is, you can guide them and instruct them, say, look, this is my experience. I know what it was like to be you when I was your age and some of these things, etc. And you give them that wisdom. And you raise up the child with information, hopefully at some point where it will click. Some of it will click right away. Some of it will click years later. And they'll go, oh, that's what my father meant. Oh, that's what my mother meant. I get it now. Okay? But otherwise, you have to live with the total frustration of knowing you can only do so much. I mean, it just is. As a parent, you would get very frustrated knowing you can't make them get it. You know? You can't. And so it's kind of like the T-shirt I know that Robert had on a while back and said, I can explain it to you, but I can't understand it for you. I love that shirt. I can explain it to you. So a child comes to you and you say, look, I can help you with it, I can explain it to you, but I can't understand it for you. Either you're ready to understand it or you're not. So you might have to have more life experience, right, before you can get to that place. Next question.
Miss Mo would like to know, if a teacher is mixing Torah with Kabbalah, is it wrong to rebuke the teacher and defend the Torah?
Okay, so yes, it is wrong. Look, if the teacher is teaching anything, that's wrong. It is wrong for you to rebuke a teacher. You can sit down gently with the teacher to try to understand why they're doing it. And once you understand what they're doing, and they have reasons for it, I mean, they understand what they're doing, you can then choose not to be under that teacher. But it's not your job to rebuke teachers. It is Yahweh's job to rebuke teachers. It's not your job to correct teachers. That doesn't say you can't talk to them. What you may want to talk to them about is find out why they're doing it. We've had a person here that was teaching the children and was teaching some stuff that I didn't know why they were doing. And I said, well, why are you teaching that? I didn't rebuke them. I first wanted to understand what they were doing. Then I explained, well, that's not what we're supposed to be doing here, because that's not what we're doing. And that correction was not received well. But the point being that it's not for a rebuking thing. The rebuking thing comes from above. It can come occasionally from leadership, but even leadership, I can't see myself going up to people and rebuking them. I may go over to find out, you're doing this, I've observed and seen that you're doing this. Why? Okay? And if they seem very comfortable and confident that they're with what they're doing and they don't seem like they have any interest in stopping it, then I may have to say that we may not be a good fit for you. Okay? But let's be careful with that idea of rebuking. Okay? All right.
Another question is, were the Israelites who were taken out of Israel into Assyria still considered covenanted, even though they were taken out for not obeying Yahweh in the first place?
What defines covenant? Does location define covenant? No. Relationship defines covenant. So there were some that were taken out and brought to Assyria. I don't know, let's see, there was a guy named, what is his name? Daniel was taken to Babylon. He was part of an exile, right? Daniel, but he was covenanted, wasn't he? Now, it wasn't the Assyrian one, it was the Babylonian one, but there were going to be those that when the whole nation is taken, not everybody was in bad trouble. The nation received a national punishment because of the majority of the body, the amount of people in the body, especially in leadership, that were messing this up. So covenant is something that's relational no matter where you're located. We, all of you out there watching this as well as in here, we are all in the wrong location, yet we're covenanted. Because ultimately, at some point, we're supposed to be in the land. Now, I'm not telling you to go move there now. We are in that same dispersion as the Assyrian dispersion. Some of us are descendants from that dispersion. You know, you might have to go to like one of those DNA places to see where your DNA maybe goes back to. What I'm just saying is, it's not a location thing. It's a relationship thing. All right, next question.
Last question that I have here is from Sam Davidson. He says, what does the passage mean? How shall they call upon whom they have not heard? In reference to the evangelism thing, if nobody shares, how do they hear about him?
Okay, but that's true, and it's not against the evangelism thing. It's about the apostolic thing. It's about the discipleship thing. Don't think of it as the evangelism thing. That's Christian. Evangelists don't do what Christians have had them doing. Evangelists are the ones that try to get people to come and see the speaker. Okay, the evangelists are the promoters, the marketers, the ones who get everybody excited to come hear the teacher. All right? Now, there are those who are trained who will bring a message into a town. Like, for example, I'm trained. If I came to visit your area, whoever asked this question, you as an evangelist, you could step into that mode for a minute. You could tell everybody, hey, there's a guy coming to speak. You may want to check him out. And from that point of view, Abba may draw some of them to that meeting to hear somebody like me speak. Okay? But it's not for us to go and evangelize people. Okay, when they were sent out, they went into towns, and guess what? In some places, they weren't welcome. They quickly brushed the dust off, and they went to another town to see where Abba had in mind to draw people to them. Now remember, it's always the drawing people to them, not us going and knocking on their doors. So let's be careful with that. Okay, any more? Go ahead.
McTigrit family, they want you to define teacher, because there are some who would teach, but what if I don't consider them a teacher?
Okay, I'm not sure if I understand the question. Okay, define teacher. Well, we're looking at it from the point of view of the Ephesians chapter 4, the fivefold ministry. Okay, and that ministry includes teachers. And again, the main thing being that they are trained, discipled, anointed, and appointed. Okay, just because you are instructing, let's call it, maybe we need to use the term instructor versus teacher. Okay? Mothers instruct their children. You have instructors who teach all kinds of technical skills and physical skills, life skills. Okay? I'm going to be instructing my son on how to drive. He's getting to that age where he's got to learn how to drive. So he'll get instruction. When we're talking about teachers scripturally, we're talking about those with an anointing and appointing to teach the word of Yahweh to others in a discipling type of way. In other words, the what, the when, the how, the why, etc., the where, to do all the things we need to do. So hopefully that makes sense. Now, you, to the McTiggarts there, you are to then look at the person who is teaching and decide if they are a teacher or just someone who decided to stand in front of a microphone. Because just because they're standing in front of a microphone doesn't make them a teacher. Okay? Understand that. I mean, I can go into the river, doesn't make me a fish. I'm just saying. Okay, and I can swim around, still doesn't make me a fish. So a person can get up in front of people, and they can even write it out and present it as a teaching. That doesn't make them a teacher out of the fivefold ministry guys. Those are very specific roles, which require training. You know, let's never forget at the end of Matthew, which is where a lot of this kind of confusion can come out of. You know, Matthew 28, when the quote-unquote Great Commission is given, let's just remember what it actually says here. Yeshua came up and spoke to them. Who is the them? In verse 16, and the 11 taught ones went away into Galilee to the mountain where Yeshua had appointed them. And when they saw him, they bowed to him. And when Yeshua came up and spoke to them, who is the them he's speaking to? The 11, the apostles, his students, missing Judas, because he's already out of the picture here. And this is beef. So here we have this going on, and he says to them to go out and make disciples as I've taught you. Why? Because he trained them. And so they were to go train others. Not just because they heard the word. That doesn't make you trained. Sitting in this room doesn't make you trained to teach. It hopefully makes you trained to do, to observe, to guard the commands, to covenant, to relationship with the Father and the Son. But teaching requires training in teaching. Okay? Just because you've made a few things out of wood doesn't make you a carpenter. Just because you fixed a few pipes doesn't make you a plumber. Do you understand what I'm saying? You need training to be designated with that title. Hopefully this is making some sense. All right? Okay, anything else? Okay, Daweed?
I had a quick question concerning what were you, because their question triggered a question in my own. And it's not necessarily that I need the answer, but I was just wondering if there might be some people out there that thought it. If somebody is obviously, or at least appears to us to be obviously, not instructed, not discipled, not any of that, should we be taking it upon ourselves to correct that person for their erroneous teaching or whatever?
No. Okay, look. Okay. How do I want to explain this? Let me think of an analogy. Okay, here's an analogy. Have you noticed that you can now go to most stores without any problem and find organic food? Why is that? Because a lot of people have now wanted it. And the more demand for it, the more it's being provided. So people have influenced companies through their preferences. If enough people stop listening to a teacher, guess what? He'll start to eventually recognize that there's a problem. So your best move, it's the same thing with products. Certain products that you used to see on the shelves aren't on the shelves anymore because nobody buys them anymore. So they stopped making them. Other products they didn't make a whole lot of, but people wanted them, they started making more of them. The more people are attracted to and want to follow these teachers that are not qualified, the more they will flourish, which was even happening in Yeshua's day and in the apostles' day when they talk about how there were plenty of false teachers out there and people were running off to them. Your job is to stop listening to them. Take just one number away from their following. They don't have you. And if more people do that, then they don't have anybody that are out there teaching. Maybe they'll start to realize there's a problem with their message. Okay? We have to be really careful about authority. One of the most important things that Yahweh's watching is how you treat authority, whether it's good authority or bad. What did Yeshua even say? Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. He is an authority, a real authority in your life right now. What was they told when they went into Babylon? You submit to Babylon. Respect that authority. Don't fight. Don't rebel. Go and deal and take your punishment. Okay? So we have to have look, we do not attack presidents. We do not attack other public people. I don't care if you don't like look, there have been presidents that I have not liked. That's okay. I'm not going to attack them and be disrespectful to the position. So if a person is standing up as a teacher, it's still a position that deserves respect. We don't rebuke it. We don't go up and try to usurp it. We can simply say, I recognize that that one is not one I don't need to be worried about. I need to go over here. When it comes to elected officials, wait a few years, somebody else will be in power. So I'll give you somebody new to not like. Okay? And if you weren't so emotionally filtered, you'd recognize that it doesn't matter which party they're from. They all are doing screwed up things that are not Torah-based and everything else. So we should calm down all that rhetoric. All right? Okay. Anything else? Okay. Look, this is challenging stuff because Abba's asking us to do two very challenging things. One is to reconcile the less than ideal way leadership has dealt with us in our lives and overcome that emotional thing to learn how to actually be under leadership. Because that's what this whole experience from cover to cover is about, is watching people struggle with that. It really is. How do they struggle with authority? How do they struggle being in authority? Both sides have that struggle. And so ultimately, the struggle is going to end when Yeshua shows up and say, okay, this is how it is. And all those of us that have learned how to deal with that will be right there, ready to go without any issues. Others are really going to have to worry about that rod of iron. Because you would think, well, but it's Yeshua. What do you mean, but it's Yeshua? They had the fire, the cloud, and everything, and they still did dumb things. Because you would think, but it was Moses. How could they not trust Moses? Well, they didn't. They didn't listen to Moses. Lots of them didn't listen to Moses. But you're thinking, but it's Moses. Look, I want to put something out there also that's important. Do you think that there were teachers and leaders in Scripture that people didn't love or like very much, personality-wise? Okay? All right? So it's not the job of the teacher to win you over the hearts and minds of everyone in terms of loving them as a person or liking what they're... It's about the message and the information. I mean, I would like to be popular, I suppose. All right? But I'm not really... It's not an important thing, if you understand what I'm saying. I mean, it's a lot nicer than people throwing things at me. It is. You know, beats a sharp stick in the eye and all that other stuff, fun stuff. Although... if you want this job, you may want to compare it. Here, one of the things that you may want to do before you take this job is go over to a door, stick your hand in and slam it a few times. And if you're okay with that, you might be okay with this job. Okay, because that's kind of some of the things you're going to have to deal with. All right? No, actually, better yet, let somebody else keep slamming it on your hand. Don't do it to yourself. And see if you're okay with that. It's a hard job, okay?